Good morning, everybody, and welcome to another weekend project, or let's call this as a weekend lab. This is lab number 25, where we are gonna build everything on AWS from scratch using Serverless Framework. This project is about essentially how we can essentially power our downstream user or enhance fan out from DynamoDB data. So what I'm trying to explain is when any item is inserted, updated, or deleted, there are downstream user who would wish to subscribe to these events. So how do we build that, right? So let me show you the architecture and the code and followed by a beautiful demo. So let's get started. So let me share my screen. So the architecture is fairly straightforward. We have a DynamoDB where the user will insert, update, or delete. Those events are captured and essentially broadcasted to a Kinesis data stream. A Lambda is subscribed to the Kinesis data stream, which receives data in batches. It will decode the data. It will convert the data from DynamoDB JSON to a regular standard JSON. It will also add certain housekeeping fields, which is essentially called metadata, right? So it's going to add all that. And after transformation, it's going to publish those events to an SNS notification. Now from the SNS, you can have hundreds or thousands of downstream users who are subscribed to those events, and each user can react or implement a certain business logic based on that event. For example, if there's an insert, you might want to do something else. If there's an update, you might want to do something else, right? So different events are broadcasted to the SNS, and the consumer can consume events basically based on their requirements. Let's build this. It's super fun. Again, please come to lab number 25 where I have all the code. So let's get started with the code session. On the top, I'm defining my service and the serverless framework. This is fairly straightforward and there's nothing new here. And here I'm defining my tags and essentially my memory and timeout for my Lambda functions. .env true means inject all the items from an env variable. And here I have a function. The name of the function, again, lambda function dot lambda handler, which means there's a Python file called lambda function. Inside that, there's a function called lambda handler. We'll go over the code shortly, so don't worry. These are the environment variable that I'm injecting into the lambda function, right? Events, this lambda would be invoked via Kinesis data stream. And this is the on, this is the way to get the on after the resource is created. Here I'm creating a 3 resource object, which is SNS topic. Here you can see my SNS topic has been created. Here you can see it's my DynamoDB table, type as DynamoDB. Properties, I'm defining my sort key and range key, hash key and range key, or together called as a composite key. Then I'm defining my schema here. I'm using on-demand mode, which means I don't want to specify RCU, WCU. I'm using the standard storage class. By default, it is standard. I'm using point-in-time recovery, which is essentially backup on Dynamo. And essentially then I have my Kinesis data stream. So here is my on for my Kinesis data stream. So here is the part where Kinesis data stream has been created. It's basically on demand, right? After this is created, we reference here by using the word get ATT and followed by .arn, right? So this will give you the on. Now let's take a look at the Lambda function, what we have done here. So the Lambda function again is fairly straightforward, nothing new. We have two functions, marshal and unmarshal. These are used to essentially convert Dynamo JSON to a regular standard JSON. We have a class called SNS, which will help us to publish messages to the AWS SNS. Has a simple method called publish message to the SNS. We have a function called flatten data dict. Basically, given a dictionary, this job is to flatten out the dictionary. It's gonna recursively call this function and it's gonna flatten this out. Over here, if you observe for record in record, we receive the records, we essentially decode the records and we deserialize the records. Once we deserialize the record, we get the event name from the records. And then I've declared a global variable, which is called JSON data. Depending upon the event type, whether it's insert, modify, or remove, we essentially update the variable JSON data. At the end, I'm essentially saying if the JSON data is not none, add the housekeeping field. These are housekeeping field, for example, source, name, event ID, region. And then all we are doing is we are creating an instance of a class AWS SNS, and then we are calling the method publish message to the SNS, and we are providing a message. The message is gonna be a serialized a JSON, string JSON, right? And at the end, I'm just printing the length. So this, given all the items, whenever insert update happens, they go to the Kinesis data stream. Lambda is gonna process these data, and then it's gonna power my downstream user, okay? So let me show you this in action. This is amazing to watch, right? So I'm gonna say, so I'm gonna insert this event into Dynamo, and all this thing nearly happens near real time. So ready, create item, I have inserted, which means at this point in my architecture, if you observe, it will go to the Kinesis data stream, the Lambda will get the data, and then it will do the pre-processing, and then essentially will pass to the SNS topic where we have our downstream users, multiple users who are subscribed to these events, right? So now if we come to the, so here you can see is my SNS, and everything's done through Serverless Framework, right? So I have a simple subscriber that I have added just to show you. So this would be this one over here. I'm coming to the logs CloudWatch to show you. So I'm just gonna refresh. And here I'm expecting something to see like Sawmill, as you can see, right? Over here, Sawmill Shah, and let me try to zoom in, otherwise you'll say I'm lying. All right, so hopefully you guys can see now, right? So message published to the SNS, right? And here Sawmill Shah, that's the event coming from DynamoDB, right? So it's absolutely fun to build this everything from scratch. And I was able to deploy this using a simple command called serverless deploy. And if you observe, here is my infrastructure code, everything very well organized in one file. Here are all my resources. All you gotta do is just say SLS deploy. There is an env file. You need to put your credentials, of course, access and secret key. But I hope you have really enjoyed watching these videos. And as I always keep saying, watching does not really help, trying does help. So a person, for example, me, I learn more and much better when I actually try stuff and I see things happening. So I recommend you pause the video, go to the GitHub, download the code. I have written every single thing for you, right? So all you gotta do is just download and deploy. So what are you waiting for? Download the code and simply deploy. And at the end, if you don't mind, please give a like or subscribe or comment on the video. That would be really, really appreciated because it takes a lot of effort to build all these content, provide code, and put everything together. A simple like would simply make my day. Thank you so much. Make sure to share this video to your coworkers if needed, right? And this is how you can power downstream user from Dynamo data using basically streams, okay? So, but that being said, I guess I have nothing more to add. So keep smiling, keep programming. See you guys next time.